Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
And we saved, of course, the best for last. We're going to have Muthu tell us about the power of secure two-party computation, or as you all know it, 2PC in the head. So, Muthu.
Thanks, Nir. Is it clear to everyone, my voice? Okay. First, thanks Yale, Microsoft, Nir, Daniel, and Vinod for giving me this opportunity to present this work. This work is joint with Kermit Hazai from Bar-Ilan University. So let me start. This talk is about three primitives that we have known and loved for a long time in cryptography. This is secure two-party computation, zero knowledge, and randomized encodings. What I'm going to convince you on a very high level towards by the end of this talk is, if my thing works, yes, it's working, awesome, is I'm going to give you a general transformation from secure two-party computation to zero knowledge. I'm going to not show you today, but there is a transformation from two-party computation to randomized encoding, and from randomized encoding to zero knowledge. Okay? Now, I want to stress that
you mean from any two-party computation protocol, you can get randomized encoding.
we'll get into the specifics. Yes. Yeah. So I want to stress that it's easy. Secure computation is actually a more general problem than zero knowledge. But if we use this general way of instantiating zero knowledge from secure computation, you will have to rely on oblivious transfer. I want a transformation that does not require oblivious transfer as an assumption. And actually, almost all our constructions in this work require one-way functions. At some point, I might need one-way permutations, and I'll tell you then. Now, yes?
Any two-party computation, zero knowledge is a special case of two-party computation.
Yes.
Right? So why do you say, why do you need oblivious transfer?
If you instantiate zero knowledge as an instance of secure computation, then the assumption you require is oblivious transfer, and you will also not get proofs. You will only get arguments. So I want to take.
You're not talking about an additional assumption. You're saying if you.
Yes. I'm saying that this is trivial if I assumed oblivious transfer. Again, arguments, not proofs. But I just want to stress here that.
You don't assume oblivious transfer, so what does the statement mean? I mean, there's no.
Yes. So we'll come to that. So let me start with. I'm going to talk about this transformation and this transformation today, and the other one you can look in our paper. All right. So what are our results in a nutshell before more questions get raised? Our first theorem is let R be an NP relation. Given any semi-honest two-party computation in the OT hybrid, then assuming only one-way function, I'm going to construct a static zero-knowledge proof for this relation R, where f is going to be something that's related to R, and I will also tell what this black box means. So given a secure computation of a protocol for f that is related in R, I'm going to give you a transformation where I use only one-way function and give a static zero-knowledge proof for the relation R. Okay. I'll tell what static is when static is what we all know what zero knowledge is. The next theorem will say why I specifically said static over here. Okay, so previously what did we know in this space? Well, we know the classic zero knowledge proofs for the classic NP complete languages. This is what we learn in typical crypto classes. Yes?
So the 2PC you need is for something that is related to R, but you're
Yes.
not telling us in this statement, right?
Yeah, I'm not telling you right now. Okay, now the second one, which is also a very seminal result in the space, shows that if you start from any information-theoretic multi-party computation protocol or an MPC protocol in the OT hybrid with 3 or more parties, you can transform this using a generic compiler to a zero knowledge proof. And this was done by Ishai, Kushilevitz, Ostrovsky, and Sahai. Yes?
So the point of the thing in the red is that you can do this without going through the NP completeness.
Yes. That is also one of the points about this transformation, but more importantly, I can do it from a semi-honest two-party computation as opposed to MPC, which was known before.
You could also do it without anything, but you want to gain.
Yes. What I want to gain, we'll come to that. Each of my theorems have something to gain about, and I'll tell you. What's the, yes?
So the last requirement, F is, the fact that F is black box in R is not something you can get without, with what Ron was saying, right?
Yes, that is one of the things that you can't get. I mean, I'm also saying that this F, okay, maybe I can be a little more precise. This F only will make sort of a black box call to R. In which case you cannot do any of these you can't use any of these zero knowledge proofs, because here you have to know the relation to construct these zero knowledge proofs.
But the ICOS paper does have the
Yes.
properties.
Yes.
It's free instead of
Yes. Yes.
And the information theoretic?
So we don't, like two-party doesn't have information theoretic. So
No, that's for instance one or something, but okay. So you don't need information theoretic.
I don't need information theoretic. Yes. All right. So let's go to the second theorem, which I like the most, but probably not the mainstream. People might not like that as much. It requires some taste. Given any semi-adaptive, semi-honest two-party computation in the OT hybrid, again, not quite the OT hybrid with some more restrictions, and I'll get into this later, but I just want to tell you what the theorem statement on a high level is. Given such a two-party computation where semi-adaptivity means some minimal amount of adaptive security, and adaptive security is basically about telling when a party is corrupted in an interaction. Static means it's corrupted at the beginning, adaptive means it can be the adversary can adaptively decide when to corrupt, as well as there is an additional case where an adversary can corrupt all the parties as well. Okay, and semi-adaptive is a specific kind which I will get into later. What do I construct? Given such a two-party computation protocol, now again assuming only one-way functions, I can get an adaptive zero-knowledge proof for the relation R with similar conditions on the function, and I can also get an offline-online randomized encoding for F. Now this one, you probably have to take it with a bucket of salt. I'm not going to talk about this now, but you can come and ask me after the talk what this result exactly means here. So I'll get to that as well. Sorry for being very vague right now. So I want to say that previously the only work that talks about adaptive zero knowledge proofs is,
What are adaptive zero knowledge?
so adaptive zero, you just think of the classic zero knowledge requirement, but in addition, if I just want to sort of take the essence, given a simulated view, you should also have an additional algorithm that can explain the simulated view as something that was honestly generated for true statements. Okay, so you run the simulator, it produces a view, but then after that there is another button I can push, and the simulator should now give me random coins for the honest prover consistent with this view. So when I push this button, I give the simulator the witness as well, but it needs to generate random coins for the honest prover. So that's adaptive zero knowledge.
Zero knowledge, the virtual verifier and prover of the simulator are, no, I think
Yes.
no.
This can be formalized in the UC setting, but I didn't want to get into that, so that's why I don't want to talk about it. All right.
Randomness is the randomness of the proof, right?
Yes, randomness of the prover. That is the hardest case, I mean. All right. The third result, which is I think a little more interesting, which says that given any NP relation R and any robust randomized encoding that's secure against adaptive inputs, I can construct a black box construction of a 4-round delayed input commit and proof protocol. I know there are too many terms here. Let me just break down a little bit. So what is delayed input? This is actually something that Silas mentioned a little bit. To get these very efficient, round efficient protocols, you want a zero knowledge protocol that has an additional property where the honest prover does not require to know the statement until the last round. Okay, so that's the delayed input property, and commit and prove is, again, in the UC literature, people know when they see what commit and prove is, but roughly what this says is I can commit some string and then I want to prove something about what is being committed over here. Okay, now the non-trivial part of the statement is the black box construction based on one-way permutation. So let's see what we know previously. So we can do standard commit and prove from the information-theoretic multi-party computation or 3 or more parties using IKOS. Now this does not satisfy the delayed input property, and I will also tell you why it cannot you cannot hope to achieve this delayed input property using the IKOS approach. Well, if you want to settle for the non-black box constructions, we knew how to do this since the 1990s by Lapidot, Shamir, and Lapidot, Shamir. And in fact, this is the protocol which is used in the work that Silas mentioned for getting a 4-round concurrent non-malleable commitment. They needed such a protocol to use to extend their 3-round to get a zero knowledge property. They needed a delayed input commit and prove protocol to get a 4-round non-malleable commitment. Yes.
So delayed input in the case of commitment, what does it mean? That I
So,
don't know the message?
I know think of it that I know the witness, but I don't know the statement. So in the case of non-malleable commitments, I know what message I'm committing, but later I need to prove some relation regarding, for instance, in his work, you need to show these linear relations among the things that have been committed. So you don't know you know what the relation is, you just don't know what the statement is because it depends on the second and third message.
So, yeah, I'm confused about this word black box. So are you, so it seems like the statement is like making non-black box use of a cryptographic primitive. So are you giving are you changing the statement so it no longer makes it? So will you actually get an efficient?
So if you formulate what you want as a commit and prove call, then there is no non-black box. In the UC sense, if I had this primitive called commit and prove, I can commit and then later prove anything about this thing. Okay? About what value has been committed over here.
Are you going to explain it later what is delayed input commit and prove? Because I didn't get it.
No, I mean that's as much as I'm going to say what delayed input is. So delayed input basically is simple, right? I mean, if I have a 4-round zero knowledge, so in the context of commit and prove, I know something about, let's say, just the witness. Or rather, let me make it more simple. I know the witness. And in the first round, I want to commit to my witness. And then I only know in the 4th round, I know what relation I need to show that this witness satisfies, or what statement. The relation also, I can say that I know what the relation is.
So that's a weird kind of setting?
It's not a weird kind of setting. It's exactly used in the non-malleable commitments because they do something in the first 3 rounds, and in the 4th round, they need to prove something about the value committed to in the first round. And
it's also exactly what Lapidot and Shamir do, where they commit to the Hamiltonian cycle first, and then they open something that they need to later.
So what is delayed? It is not the input, it's the relation.
Yes, the statement. The relation is known, yes, because I already start with R being the NP relation. And also it has some implications to tokens. If you use tokens for commitments, then you can't quite, the only way you can do commit and prove is by using, with round efficient protocol, is by using such a delayed input commit and prove, which I won't get into, but it has some implications to tamper-proof hardware as well. Yes?
Soundness also stronger, like you achieve soundness even if the adversary delays the choice of the node instance, or you're still delaying?
Yes. Even for adaptive inputs, which I did not mention, but also for adaptively chosen input statements, all the properties hold. The simulation holds, soundness also holds.
What kind of relations are you allowed to?
Any NP relation. Yes. Okay. So let me, I just want to point out that there is another work in the space where given delayed input protocols, there have been, there's this recent work of Allais et al., but I mean I should say Chumpy et al., that shows how to efficiently compose delayed input sigma protocols. All right, so the two important, like at least corollaries of this work, I just want to state it. One is combining the work that Silas talked about a little bit at the beginning of his talk, which is by Goyal, Rosen, Richardson, and Wald. If you combine their work with our commit and prove protocol, we get the first black box construction of a concurrent non-malleable commitment. Actually, this is based on one-way permutations, I apologize, in 4 rounds. Previous construction either required more rounds or depended on the underlying function in a non-black box way, or it had bounded concurrency. So it was restricted in one of these 3 ways, but here we show concurrent non-malleable commitments based on one-way permutations in a black box way. And another corollary, which again I won't talk about, is we can, combining the work of Garg, Gentry, Halavi, and Rykova, we can show that in the tamper-proof model, we can get a 3-round UC-secure multi-party computation protocol. And so the work of Garg et al. Actually shows how to construct a 2-round in the common reference string model. This is sort of the first work that shows in another sort of UC setup model in the tamper-proof model. We don't know that. I don't know that, or rather I should say I don't know that. And there is a specific reason why we can't get it below 3-round, at least in our protocol. All right, so let me start the definition of zero knowledge. I just like to present it, so I'm going to present it. It says that for every malicious verifier, there is a simulator S such that the view observed by the verifier in a real world or in a real interaction with the prover can be simulated by this simulator. And the only additional point I want to say, which I already said before, which got erased again quickly, okay, that's because of my animation, I apologize. But what it says basically is that if I additionally want the zero knowledge proof to be adaptively secure, then I need to show that after the simulation has output a view, I should also be able to produce random coins to show that this is consistent with an honest prover. Okay, so that is an additional requirement to prove something is adaptive zero knowledge. All right, so let me, for some reason okay, so the first theorem, let me just state it more formally what I'm going to say here. So let R be an NP relation. Suppose pi f is a secure 2-party computation protocol in the OT hybrid for f, which satisfies 2 conditions. One, it should be perfectly correct, which means that it does not admit any bad randomness in the protocol. And the second is that it's UC secure against semi-honest adversaries. I only need semi-honest security, and this UC can be weakened, but just for so that it's easy for me to describe, I'm saying that it's UC secure against semi-honest adversaries. Then I can show that assuming one-way functions, there is a static zero knowledge proof for R. Okay, so this is the formal statement. Again, I'm going to say that f can be defined with an oracle call to R, which is sort of a feature of our transformation. All right, so before I get into proving this result, I want to say this previous result of ICOS and sort of show why that doesn't work in the 2-party case. Okay, so what do they show? They show that they construct a zero knowledge proof for a relation R given any n-party MPC for a related f, and I'm going to show you what the related f is. So given an NP relation, the related f is defined as follows. You take as input n parts, sort of think of n shares, and the relation is evaluated on the XOR of these shares. Now how does this zero knowledge protocol work? The prover in her head evaluates or sort of emulates an MPC protocol with the following function where W1 through Wn are the inputs of these parties and generates views for all these parties. In the first round, it commits to each of these views individually. Then the verifier selects a random pair of views among the n views and asks the prover to open. Okay, and sorry, before I go into this, roughly the idea behind this protocol is if this MPC protocol is perfectly correct and if the prover can answer all the questions correctly, then it defines a valid MPC view for this functionality, and if this MPC is perfectly correct, then the statement has to be true. Okay, so that is the soundness of this. The soundness is not negligible, but it's still good. And simulation, on the other hand, will use the simulation of the MPC, where the simulator basically just guesses I and j and commits to those two views correctly using the simulation for the MPC protocol.
Yeah, so the soundness relates to the number of players, right?
Yes, it'll actually, yeah, it'll be like 1 minus 1 over n squared or something like that. Yes, and their work has plenty of other constructions which make it extremely efficient. I mean, if you're looking for communication, like the number of bits transmitted, that's the work that you have to look at. All right, so now how does one instantiate this MPC protocol? There are one of two options that you can use. One is use any information-theoretic MPC protocol that is perfectly correct or robust as they define. But any such information-theoretic protocol requires at least 3 parties. Okay, it's not sort of relevant to what we are saying because we are looking at 2-party computation protocols. But they also actually construct something for sort of using protocols like GMW, which is defined in the OT hybrid. But however, they still require 3 parties when they are using instantiating their MPC with GMW. This is because they have to verify these oblivious transfer calls. They need to open at least 2 views in this case to verify that the OT transmissions were correctly encoded. You want to see the sender's view and the receiver's view in these commitments. So if you have to open at least 2, if you want privacy, you need at least 3 parties. So that's why this approach does not work for 2-party computation protocols. And I'm saying does not with a star because I presented this in the Desert workshop, and Yuval after some time came and said there is a workaround to use 3 parties but start from a 2-party. So he shows that if you start from a 2-party computation protocol, you can move to a 3-party protocol and then instantiate it using random OTs. So I'm not going to get into it, but there is sort of a workaround, but directly it does not work here. Okay? All right, so let me give my construction. This is actually extremely simple. What is the function that we want the 2PC for? Yes? So they can instantiate it with GMW in the OT hybrid, but the way they encode the OT channels is the sender encodes what the sender sends on the OT channel and the receiver encodes what it receives on the OT channel. Now, in order to verify that all these OTs were correctly encoded for soundness proof, you need to open at least 2 views. Otherwise, you can never check that the OT was incorporated into the views correctly. Yes, so the soundness will break. All right, so how do we get a static zero knowledge? Ooh, it's already half an hour, so let me go a little fast. So the function is going to be very similar to the ICOS, where you're just going to XOR the 2 inputs and evaluate the relation on it. So what is our protocol? Well, the prover is going to do a 2PC in the head. It's going to run this 2-party computation protocol where it's going to sample randomly W1 and W2 such that W1 plus W2 is the witness. Now, in the first round, it's going to send just the transcript of the interaction. So this is sort of different, deviating from the ICOS approach where the views were sent. We are going to send just the transcript of this interaction. Now, the verifier again is going to say B equals 0 or 1. If it sends actually 1 or 2 because my parties are named 1 or 2. So if B is 1, the prover gives the input and randomness of party P1, and the verifier checks if this view is consistent with the transcript, and if B is 2, it gives the input and randomness of P2. Now, why is this sound? Well, just using the same, this just follows similar to the ICOS, where if you give me correct input and randomness for both these parties, from perfect correctness, I will get soundness. Now, simulation on the other hand, I will guess what bit it is and then use the corresponding simulation. I have assumed that it is, I have static simulation of both parties P1 and P2, okay? All right, so I'm just going to give you a very high level, just pictorial diagram of why this is secure. Yes, okay, he already observed this, it's coming in the next slide. All right, because, hold on.
The zero knowledge protocol is on as half?
Yes, it's still half. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you that to show the case for b equals 1, we will invoke the UC simulation for this, and for b equals 2, we use the simulation for the second party. There is a subtle point that I'm not talking about, which actually I do need sort of some flavor of UC securities, because the inputs for P1 and P2 are correlated. They are distributed depending on this W. That's why I need sort of UC security to argue both these indistinguishability holes. Okay, but now the question is, what about OT channels? Now, in your 2PC protocol, you're giving this transcript, and the prover, the two parties are also going to engage in OT channels. So what are you going to do? So let's say, I'm just going to give you with a single example. Suppose P1 and P2 engage in the following oblivious transfer, where P1 has inputs S0, S1, and P2 has input T. Now, I'm going to incorporate it here by, for every OT, I'm just going to make the prover commit to these two inputs separately. Now, for the b equals 1 case, where I open P1's view, that is P1's input and randomness, I'm going to decommit both these guys. But for the other one, I'm only going to decommit ST. And this simple trick will help you encode the oblivious transfer, and the only thing I have used is commitments which can be based on one-way functions. Okay, there is another view which I haven't written here. Another way of looking at this is I'm actually using a randomized encoding of oblivious transfer, where this can be thought of as the offline part and this can be thought of as an online part. And I'll talk about it a little bit later towards the end of my talk. But there is a way to see how I encode this OT channels as a randomized encoding, and if you generalize this from OT to all the way to the function, you actually get one of our transformations of randomized encoding to zero knowledge directly. If you didn't follow that, that's fine. We'll just go on with the talk. Okay, all right. So this is how we get, this is our first theorem. And I want to just say that a simple corollary to this, I mean, this is sort of where we started with this work, is that you get a very simple zero knowledge proof based on gobble circuits. And I'm going to very quickly tell you what this thing is. We use, now we don't need to do any secret sharing. Let's just say that this is the function. Now you can think of the prover just giving the gobble circuit for this function and commits to every input label in the gobble circuit. Now, the verifier can say b equals 0, you just open the gobbling, and if it's b equals 1, you just give the labels corresponding to the witness. And the verifier will check if the circuit evaluates to 1. This is actually a very simple zero knowledge proof based on gobble circuits. And you can also do soundness and simulation. I'm not going to get into it. All right, so let me go to the second theorem where I show how to construct an adaptive zero knowledge. And this sort of highlights the properties of where we use the real power of two-party computation. We're going to show that two-party computation has these certain adaptive properties that will help you get adaptive zero knowledge on one end and delayed input zero knowledge on the other, both of which has sort of an adaptive flavor. And I'm going to see, depending on how much time I have, I'm going to show you these transformations. So the second theorem, this is a little more involved. I'm going to go into the conditions required for the two-party computation. So suppose pi f is a two-party computation in the OT hybrid with the following properties. Pi is perfectly correct, just as before. And now I want UC security against two kinds of corruptions. Now, when I'm going to, in the rest of the talk, I'm going to have sort of P1 and P2 have designated roles in my 2PC. I'm going to put a lot of restrictions, but you will see that it can be easily instantiated. Now, the first one I need is a static corruption of P1 followed by an adaptive corruption of P2. This is what is actually referred to as semi-adaptive security. It was introduced by Goldreich-Micali-WigdersonGÇ and Zhu. And basically it says that I need a simulator that can admit the following adversary. It statically corrupts P1, generates P1's view, and then at the end, post-execution, it can also give me the view of P2 after I give its input. Okay? And the other one is just simple static corruption of P2. I need simulations of both these kind of adversaries. I'm stating them, I could have just said full adaptive security and both of these things would have been subsumed, but I want to specifically say that I just need simulation of these two adversaries. Okay, and now this is sort of the non-trivial requirement that we need, where P2 is the receiver in all the oblivious transfer interactions and is the only person that receives the output. Okay, now there are so many restrictions that I have made, and now the question is, okay, what do we get? We get that assuming one-way function, there is an adaptive zero-knowledge proof for this relation R. How can we instantiate this 2PC? Actually, you can instantiate this with both the GMW 2PC as well as garbled circuits. The semi-adaptive security is actually not, it's not hard. When you want to simulate it, you can, if you look at both the GMW and YAO protocol, in our case, if I know the input of P1, to simulate its view, I can just do it honestly. And then for P2, all I would have to do is sort of simulate the oblivious transfer to get P2's view. Okay, and the other requirement that P2 is the receiver in all oblivious transfer, since OT is symmetric, that also works out in the GMW case. And there are, even if you look at textbooks, they define GMW only with one party being the sender. So all these restrictions seem a lot, but standard 2PC protocols satisfy all these requirements. Okay, so what did we know before? We knew that we can construct an adaptive zero-knowledge proof based on one-way function, and this was done by Lindell and Zarosim. They actually, their approach was, given an NP language L, they construct this primitive which is known as an adaptive instance-dependent commitment scheme, which I will define in a minute. They show, using the Blum Hamiltonicity zero-knowledge proof, they show how to construct this primitive, and from this primitive they show how to get an adaptive zero-knowledge. And the second compilation also uses Blum Hamiltonicity. First, I'm going to show you that you don't need the second compilation, you can actually achieve it using the ICOS approach. If I have this adaptive instant dependent scheme, then I don't need to use this Blum Hamiltonicity zero knowledge. And why I'm stressing this Blum Hamiltonicity is because I don't want that. I want to be able to use a 2PC for a function that just makes an oracle call to the NP relation, and I don't want any of those. Okay? All right, so what is an adaptive instance dependent commitment scheme? This is probably my ugliest slide, but bear with me. So the definition is that it has basically three algorithms. One is the real commitment scheme, that given an instance from the language L and a message produces a real commitment. For now, let's assume these are all non-interactive. Now the simulated commitment, there is a second algorithm which is the simulated commitment that doesn't take any message. Okay, it's an adaptive input dependent commitment scheme. The simulator does not get the message, just with the instance it creates something called a commitment. And then there is a third algorithm which is the adapt algorithm, which after the commitment is generated by the simulator, given the input witness and the randomness used by the simulator, it can open this commitment as a commitment to any message. Okay, and this is a little more stronger than general adaptivity requirements. This algorithm should actually give random coins consistent with the real commitment scheme. It produces a fake commitment, and then later you give the input witness and any message. It should show that the simulated commitment was actually generated by the real commitment scheme. You have to give me randomness for that. Okay, so what are the two properties that we need from such a scheme? One is binding, and binding is simply stated by requiring that the support of the real commitment for two different messages are disjoint. Okay, and I'm not going to state hiding as usual commitment or hiding, but I'm going to give the special hiding property which will imply standard hiding properties of commitment schemes. So what does this say? It says that given a real commitment, a message and the randomness used to generate the commitment, it should be indistinguishable from a simulated commitment. So the simulated commitment takes no message. The message and then the adapt algorithm generates random coins consistent with the real commitment. So this is the special hiding property. Okay, so given such an adaptive instance dependent commitment scheme, we can actually construct adaptive zero knowledge. I'm going to do that first and then show how to construct this primitive from 2PC with the required properties. Okay? All right, so I'm going to do this first. I'm going to start with the ICOS. As I said, I can use this ICOS protocol. I'm going to modify it using this AIDCS to get an adaptive zero knowledge proof. What am I going to do? I'm going to make this is just a first attempt, and then finally you'll see what's going to happen. So the prover is going to use the adaptive input dependent commitment scheme to commit to all the views. The verifier picks 2, and then the prover opens these 2 views. Okay, so now if I wanted to simulate, remember in ICOS I just guess Vi, Vj, and I can open them. Okay, but now the simulator, what it's going to do is, it's still okay with, I mean, this protocol is still simulatable because it doesn't have to really commit the other views. It just has to commit I and j. And this, it uses the simulation of the MPC to generate the views Vi, Vj, the simulator in this protocol. Okay, I'm still not there yet. I'm just trying to build it from the ICOS paper. Now the problem right here is that I can't get adaptive zero knowledge, because if I now ask at the end of the protocol, please show me that this transcript was generated by an honest prover, I cannot open these real commitments to other messages. Okay? Because as I told you, the binding property says that they are all disjoint. I can't now suddenly open it to a consistent view. I commit it to garbage as the simulator, but later I need to open it. And now, given that you have seen what AIDCS can do, the simple fix to this is just replace the rest of the commitments using a simulated commitment. Now, at the end, if I'm going to ask the simulator to produce the view, at that point I know the witness. And when I know the witness, I can run the adaptive algorithm, and I can open all the remaining views consistent with an MPC execution of what I want. Okay? But there's a subtle issue. I need to, given I use the simulator to generate Vi and Vj, but later I need to find views of the remaining parties consistent with Vi, Vj. This is sort of true for information-theoretic protocols. They are usually perfectly secure, and we have to show it for the BGW protocol, but that is easily achievable. Okay? All right. So this is the simple part of the proof, where I show that given an AIDCS, I can get a two-party, I can get an adaptive zero knowledge proof. And this part again uses the function only in, makes a black box call to the relation, which follows from ICOS. All right, so now this is the non-trivial part of our construction, where we construct AIDCS from this restricted two-party computation protocol. Okay, so let's just quickly recall what were the requirements that we needed. We needed perfect correctness. We needed simulation against a static corruption of P1 and an adaptive corruption of P2, which is pictorially shown this way, and a static corruption of P2. Okay? And the function is going to be as before, that we used even for the static case, and P2 is the receiver in all OT instantiations and in and also receives the final output. Okay? So now, as I mentioned before, all requirements are satisfied by both GMW and YAL. All right, so let me quickly tell you what is our AI DCS. What is the commitment to 0? A commitment to 0 is just going to use our first simulation, not all the way. Remember, our first simulation is a static corruption of P1 and an adaptive corruption of P2. So it just samples random coins W1 for P1 and generates the view, and stops at the end just before it needs to produce the view of P2. Okay? So this is a UC simulation, so it's simulating the view of P1. After the execution completes, it's going to give P2, but it's going to stop just before that and just give the view, the transcript generated by, this is the commitment. The real commitment to 0 just runs P1, gives the transcript of the communication. Now what is a real commitment to 1 is to run the simulation S2 from P2's point of view. So I have a second simulator that just does static simulation of the second party, I generate a random input for it, and I produce its view. Okay? So now what is the simulated commitment? The simulated commitment is just going to be, actually it's going to be a real commitment to 0. I apologize for this mistake. I was trying to make these things fancy and I made a 0 to a 1. All right. So now I want to show the two properties, binding and hiding. The binding property, okay, I didn't write it, but the binding property follows because if I can give you a single transcript and an input and randomness consistent for both P1 and P2, just as before from perfect correctness, I will get binding property. I should not be, if I start with a false statement, I shouldn't be able to generate views for both P1 and P2 consistently. And to show that I have an adaptive algorithm, the commitment just basically follows the commitment to 0, which is this simulation by S1. But now I'm going to use the fact that it can also simulate the view of P2 post-execution corruption. Okay? But now remember, the adaptive algorithm has the witness W, which means it can now tell what the input of P2 should be after knowing the witness. When it actually generated the commitment, it just made W1 as random. It didn't know what to set W2 as because it doesn't know what the witness is. But now the adapt algorithm knows the witness and it can now tell what the input of P2 should be, and it can produce the view of P2. So in this way, the adapt algorithm, given a simulated commitment, can give both views of P1 and P2. Yes? Lindell Zarosim.
The commitment scheme is information-theoretic for both hiding and binding, right? It's like an instant-dependent commitment scheme.
Yes.
So do you inherit the same property that you have?
Yes. If it's perfect correctness, yes, we do, right? Now, I need to also show that, I need to show indistinguishability, the special hiding property. I'm not going to talk about it, but I need to show that the view output for the, okay, the first part is easy. To show that the commitment to 0 is the same, since the simulated commitment follows the 0 commitment algorithm, that is easy, it's just direct. But to do the 1, it follows the 0 commitment strategy and then uses this adaptive corruption of P2. Only in that case, I need to show that it is indistinguishable from a commitment to 1, okay? And this follows from the semi-adaptive simulation property of my 2PC. Okay, that's why I had all these requirements for my 2PC. Okay, because a real commitment to 1 just follows S2's algorithm, and a real commitment, a simulated commitment when opened to a commitment to 1 uses the semi-adaptive simulator. Now I can use the semi-adaptive UC secure property to show that these two are indistinguishable, and it's a direct argument. There is no complication in showing this. All right, so now we have got an AI DCS from any 2PC. We know how to construct an adaptive zero knowledge from any AI DCS. Everything is clean. It uses only the function. The function uses the relation in a black box. So we get a soundness half adaptive zero knowledge starting from any semi-adaptive, semi-honest 2PC. Okay? All right, so the next few slides are going to be a little more ugly, but I'm going to try to do it at a high level. Yes?
So, what about soundness like less than a half? So you can get soundness for a half if you have linear operations. You're not doing anything fancy, no like NP relation, just linear operations. You can get soundness a half, just normal cut and choose.
Yes.
So is the point here?
I'm going to answer your question. Okay, so I said I can instantiate my two-party computation with YA or GMW. Now equivocating just one bit, meaning to just commit to one bit of a message, I need to run this 2PC protocol. And the entire transcript, if you remember the commitment was the entire transcript, it will be S times poly K, where S is the size of the circuit. Let's say that we use GMW. In GMW, the communication, including this oblivious transfer, is going to be size of circuit times polynomial in the security parameter. And then if I use for the second part of it, for the ICOS part of it, if I use BGW, that's going to require me to I need to do order S bit commitments. So this would give me actually an order S squared poly K communication, adaptive zero knowledge, where S is the size of circuit and I only get soundness half. But I want to say this already improves Lindell Zarosim, which does this Karp reduction to the Blum Hamiltonicity, and it's S to the 4 at least. And if you use this ICOS, it becomes S cubed, but it's still worse than this. But we also show, and this is sort of the most technical part of the paper that I'm just going to sort of tell at a very, very high level. We get negligible soundness with just S times poly K. Okay. Now I want to compare this with static zero knowledge, which I haven't said. ICOS gives the best communication efficient static zero knowledge for any NP relation. They actually show it's order S plus poly K. So it's actually constant times the circuit size plus something in the security parameter, but we get like order S times poly K. And I'm calling it linear rate, although people object to calling that a linear rate. It improves theorem 2, yes.
Theorem 2 is.
I just wanted to tell you what I showed you before yields theorem 2, but we can actually get theorem 3, and this requires actually fancy gadgets that we knew before and some we didn't know. And I'm going to tell you what they are, and if you are lost here, that's fine. After that, I'm going to come to randomized encoding and probably we can pick up again. I'm going to be at a very high level now. Okay, so I want to improve the communication complexity, and roughly the idea is we want a better AI DCS. Before, for equivocating one bit, we needed to spend a lot, but can we do it better where if I had a fixed polynomial in the input, call it T, then can I do it better with better communication complexity, and that's what we show. We show that we can, if you think of our adaptive zero knowledge, we actually committed to these views, and these views as a whole had to be equivocated in the ICOS approach. So that's why having a better equivocation parameter is going to help us get a more communication efficient protocol. Okay. One of the basic ingredients that we need here is we cannot use the basic BGW that IKOS uses. They actually have a more fancy thing where they start off with a very communication efficient MPC to get a zero knowledge, and we need to rely on that protocol. Okay, we can't because they show how to get directly negligible soundness as opposed to this constant soundness. They get negligible soundness starting from a better MPC protocol. So we need to use that, and we also need to use IPS, which is this Ishai, Prabhakaran and Sahai, where they show communication efficient 2PC protocols based on that. We have to use some of their compilation techniques over here as well. But I'm going to sort of give you an intuition. So far we have been using a semi-honest 2PC. To get this stronger statement, we are going to actually use the 2PC that is secure against a malicious P1, just one of the parties. I need it to be secure against a malicious adversary controlling P1. And now the rough idea is that to get a better equivocation, I'm going to map this message M that I want to equivocate into the space of all possible random tapes of party P2. Okay? Now, what does it mean that my protocol is secure against a malicious P1? It says that over the random tape of P2, my protocol will be correct. So that's why when I map this message space to the random tape, actually it's the random tape of P2. It means that with high probability over the random coins of P2, my protocol is correct, which means that if I start with a false statement, there are only very few random tapes that the adversary can assign to party P2. That sort of restricts the entropy of possible random tapes that the adversary can access. And now to commit to a message M, I actually need to use an interactive hashing protocol because I am using, I want to construct a proof. So that's why it can't be I can't just use a collision resistant hash function or because an information theoretic prover could find collision. So I have to use an interactive hashing protocol to get this. Okay, and it's still more non-trivial for the following reason. I also need an adaptive property, which is that later I need to be able to equivocate my message as the simulator. Now, the problem arises in an interactive hashing where we don't know of interactive hashing protocols with which has this adaptive property, where I commit to my message and then later for anything I want to produce input and randomness consistent with this. And now we actually, there is this 2-round protocol of Deng et al. To do this interactive hashing, and we weren't able to use this. We were able to show the original Novi protocol was adaptively secure. And the result of this is that our round complexity is now going to be proportional to the security parameter. So there's a lot of techniques that went into proving this. Sorry? No, yes, we need permutations, yes. Actually, no. The interactive hashing has, it's an information theoretic primitive. It has nothing to do with, you just want to compress the entropy and it does not require any assumptions. Novi was used to construct a statistically hiding commitment which requires it, but this is just the interactive hashing part. You had a question? Okay. All right, so now we can step back a little bit. So that showed how to get a communication efficient adaptive zero knowledge proof. I know that I threw you off towards the end of it. You can look into a paper for all the details. This last part, I just want to tell you how to get this delayed input commit and prove. I have like 5 to 10 minutes. Yes? Okay. Okay, good. So I'm going to go a little slowly, and there are not many slides, I promise you, not many technical details in the rest of the slides. I want to show you how we get our delayed input commit and prove 4-round protocol. Okay? All right, so first let me define randomized encoding. This requires a lot of things. Okay, so I'm going to follow the definition of Ishai Kushilevitz 00 and Applebaum Ishai Kushilevitz 04. So for any function f, I'm going to define a function g to be a randomized encoding of this function f if the following properties hold. First, there is correctness. It says that there is a decoding algorithm b such that for every input x, whatever g outputs, and you should think of the second coordinate here as the randomness used for the randomized encoding, this decoder, the probability that it does not output the correct answer is negligible. Okay, so which means G is a good randomized encoding.
Yeah, it's not the same L, right?
It's not the same L. It's not the same L, I apologize. All right, so there's a privacy requirement which says that there exists a simulator S that can just with the output f of x can produce something that is indistinguishable from the distribution of this output of this function g on a random string. And this is computationally indistinguishable. Now I'm going to define 2 more properties. One probably people have seen, and the other is something that we introduced in this work. An upgraded definition of randomized encoding is one that actually, I mean, this is also more practically motivated, is an online-offline randomized encoding, which says that the encoding function can be split as an offline part and an online part, where the offline part doesn't need to know the input on which the function is being evaluated. It is just, for me to think about this, garbled circuits are the best examples. You can generate the garbled circuit without the input. The online part are just the key labels. Okay, that's the easiest way for me to think of online-offline randomized encoding. Now, I'm going to define a non-trivial property which I have not formally said here, it's just informally said here. I need something known as a robust randomized encoding. This is sort of similar in spirit to robust MPC defined in ICOS. And roughly this property says the following: no adversary can honestly generate an offline part, meaning give random coins consistent with the honest offline algorithm for an offline part, simultaneously give an online part that decodes to something outside the support of f. Okay? Now, I'm going to make this a little more simpler. If we were just talking about NP relations over here, and f is I mean the right hand side, it's a predicate, let's think about it. Then basically it says that if I had a false statement, then if someone gives random coins consistent with this offline algorithm for the offline part, then you cannot give any online part that will decode this to a 1 if it's a false statement. Okay, so it's not possible for that's robustness.
Just to check, Yao has this property?
Yes. All right. So we also need an adaptive input secure randomized encoding. This additionally requires that the simulation can be divided into offline and online parts, such that the simulator without the output can generate the offline part, and the online part can be generated with the output f of x. In addition, there is see, this is true even for online offline, but I also need an additional property which is adaptively chosen inputs, which basically says that this needs to be true even if x and f of x is decided after the offline part is revealed. Okay? Now you can ask, do such randomized encoding exist? Recently there was a work by Hemingway et al. Who show how to get an adaptive input randomized encoding. It was not robust, but we show in our work how to make this randomized encoding robust as well. So it is possible to construct this just based on one-way functions.
So do you need the online part to be small? I mean, as an independent of the size of the function?
So for our applications, we don't need, but in general for randomized.
If that's the case, you can do it even from before, right? I mean, you just use one-time paths, Mihir as an observation.
Yes, we can use, yes, we don't need that, you're right.
No, that's not robust.
Wait, yes, that's right. Actually, I don't know how to use that because I don't know how to make that robust. I can only make the work of Alice robust because of the one-time pad, because a cheating person can also just give an arbitrary pad and do it.
I see.
Okay, all right. So now for in the last 5 minutes our delayed input zero knowledge, and then I'm going to make it commit and proof. First I'm just going to give you a delayed input zero knowledge using this adaptive input randomized encoding. Okay, so what is my function f? My function f is going to be defined by, first I choose w0 at random, and this function is going to have w0 hard coded. Its input is going to be x and w1. It's going to evaluate the relation on x, on w0 x or w1, and also going to output x. Okay, and you will see why I need to output x as part of the function. So this is the function I want the adaptive input randomized encoding for. Now what is my zero knowledge protocol? In the offline phase, all I'm going to do is give the offline part and commit to the randomness. Now the verifier can give 0 or 1. If it is 0, I'm going to send this fixed value w0 and decommit to R. What is the verifier going to do? The verifier is just going to check if everything was done right. This is very similar to our, if you looked at the garbled circuit construction, I just give you all the randomness involved in constructing this offline part. It's just verifying that this is fine. When B is 1, it's going to give the online part. And now the verifier is going to evaluate this randomized encoding, basically run the decoding algorithm to learn what this right hand side is and check if this value is 1, and also check if the statement x is the statement that you are proving. If I didn't involve this, then probably the prover could give an arbitrary statement and an arbitrary witness that satisfies the relation. It's because I put this x in the output of the function that the verifier can check that the prover is indeed proving the right statement that we care about. Okay? So now if you look at this protocol, the first round does not require the input statement. It just requires the randomness, and remember the offline part didn't require anything. It actually required this w0, but the w0 is just chosen at random to define this function f. Okay? Now, the soundness half follows just like before, but we are going to use the robustness. And how do we use the robustness? Because if you reveal both these guys, then you're giving me randomness consistent with the honest encoding of the offline part, as well as you're giving me a consistent online part that evaluates to 1, and this is exactly prevented by robustness. Okay? Simulation, you can guess B. 0 is the easy case, you can just do it honestly. The 1, you can use the offline and online simulation algorithm, and it just follows. And I'm going to quickly just say how I do commit and prove, and I'm only going to get soundness half. To get it, negligible soundness requires more effort, but I'm just going to tell you how to get a commit and prove with soundness half. I'm going to add, as part of the output, I'm going to add W1. In the first round, I'm going to commit to W0 and W1. This is the commitment part. I said I'm going to commit to the witness, and later I'm going to show that this satisfies a relation. Now, with B equals 0, along with this, I'm also going to decommit W0 as opposed to sending it in the clear. And for the other case, I'm going to decommit to W1. And this simple trick just gives you a commit and prove protocol. And this is my last slide. The perspective, just to wrap up the sort of transformations that we have in this work, we show that from 2PC in the OT hybrid, we can get both static and adaptive, but based on one-way function. And the part that I didn't explain too well is that inside this transformation, we actually rely on a randomized encoding of the oblivious-transfer functionality itself. And this is just a simple corollary. I just find that this textbook garble circuit construction is very simple to explain a zero-knowledge proof. And as I mentioned before, the ICOS approach does not work here, at least for our stronger results of adaptive zero-knowledge and delayed input zero-knowledge, and we sort of need to use properties of two-party computations to do this. And the last part that I didn't tell you is, I showed there is another transformation from secure two-party computation to randomized encoding. Well, you can't just instantiate this 2PC with anything. It has to be of a certain form to get a randomized encoding that is efficient. But it does give some sort of a lower bound that you can translate from randomized encoding back to. It helps in proving some sort of a lower bound. And finally, MPC in the head is for like static type of things, and 2PC in the head is when you need some sort of adaptive property. Thanks.